Games rated E to M. Welcome to Nintendo Power Podcast. This episode, we look at 5 features for longtime Pokemon fans in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. My name is Chris Slate. Joining me today are Theresa Apolinario from Nintendo Treehouse. Hi, Theresa.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show. And Zach Drapala from SwitchForce and GhostRobo on YouTube. Hi, Zach.
Hey, Chris. How's it going?
Great. Thanks, both of you, for coming on the show today. We got a lot to talk about, and we'll get to the usual segments like Pros Picks and Warp Zone Quiz and Players Pulse and Game Forecast later. But this time we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to start with our feature segment right up front. And we're going to be talking about 5 features in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee that longtime Pokemon fans should be very interested to hear about. Now, at this point, I think everyone knows that these games contain elements that are familiar to fans of both core Pokemon RPGs and also Pokemon Go, and that these games will be a great jumping-on point for more casual Pokemon fans like myself, who are looking to get further into the series, and also I'm personally looking forward to playing with my son now that these games can be played with 2 players. But there's a lot of these games directed at longtime Pokemon fans, and today that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about 5 features specifically that those fans will want to know about. And to start things off, just number 1, this is a Pokemon adventure on a home console. And Theresa, this is something that fans have been wanting for a long time.
That's right. Well, this is definitely the first Pokemon RPG that's on Nintendo Switch. And as a lot of people know, the Nintendo Switch is a pretty versatile console that you can have at home, but also take on the go. So this is definitely a really fun experience for all Pokemon players involved.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, obviously all of the Pokemon core RPGs have been on handheld systems. So this is the first time you'll be able to have that experience at home or on the go. And Zach, is that something you're looking forward to? Are you thinking more you're going to be playing this at home or more as a handheld experience?
Yeah, I know a lot of people are planning to play it portably, but I'm really looking forward to just sitting on my couch and enjoying a full-on Pokemon game. Like, that's a super cool thing that hasn't really been possible before. I remember I'm kind of like the perfect age for Pokemon. I was 7, 8, 9 when the first games came out, Red and Blue and then Yellow, and I kept my teal Game Boy Color in a little tin to keep Pokemon always locked in, safe, and make sure it didn't get taken. But now I love that I can take it wherever I want, as well as play it, on my own TV.
Yeah, back in the old days, you had to, on your Game Boy, you had to get under a lamp or play it into bright light, and you really had to, in some ways, compared to what we've got today, work to really enjoy those games. But now, there you are on a giant flat screen television.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really funny because my origin story too with Pokemon was Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow versions, and I explicitly remember having my Ice Blue Game Boy Pocket and the attachment to make the screen a lot brighter in order for me to play right at night when my parents thought that I was sleeping, and put the covers over and then just keep on playing into the night. So and now that this adventure is on the Nintendo Switch and it's just brought to life, and it's very different. Kanto is alive and it's beautiful, and all of the characters have their own stories and interactables, so it's really cool. It's just a lot of fun to experience.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny that you mentioned Kanto, because item number 2 on our list is the nostalgia for longtime fans returning to the world of the original Pokemon games. And there's a lot more there, I think, that will pull at the heartstrings of longtime Pokemon fans.
Yeah, for sure. So yes, that's right. We're in the Kanto region, so for core fans, that will be a very familiar territory that they'll be coming back to experience. But for the newcomers, especially Pokemon Go players that don't really know that there's a narrative to the Pokemon franchise, this is a great entry point for them into the series. And it's gorgeous world, and you don't need to know all 800 plus Pokemon that are currently out there. It starts where this franchise began. And then also the characters that are in Kanto. There's these iconic characters like Brock and Misty that you'll be able to meet and even battle because they're gym leaders within Kanto. and you'll get to see the Pokemon that they choose in order to challenge you. And it's just really interesting too to see them alive and in their colorful form, and it feels very anime-esque and cartoon because their representations in full color form were in the cartoon at first, and now to actually see it in a video game, and it's really neat to see it in the Pokemon Let's Go games.
Yeah, I think it's the most perfect realization of the Pokemon world that has ever existed. You know, we talking about comparing back to the good old days and to now, like, it's crazy to see how different the encounter with Brock or, you know, meeting Misty looks versus the original games. And that to me is the most instantly appealing thing about the Let's Go games, is that it really is like that, living that fantasy of you're here and you can play with a friend and the Pokemon follow you, and it just fully immerses you in that awesome world.
Yeah. And just kind of like going back to the cartoon of like how Brock would always kind of like poise and have his arms crossed over, or Misty with her very like cute shorts and tank top and her like little demeanor, like that stuff is in this game, and it's just really neat to see those nods and Easter eggs kind of just cross over the entire franchise.
Yeah, it's almost like you're getting to like almost go inside the old games, right? Like maybe if the old games had been brought more to life, if they could have gone beyond the technology of the time, this is what in your imagination this world might have looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I think there are some other elements that longtime fans can look forward to kind of re-experiencing in this game as well. Maybe there's some, music tie-ins. Anything there you can talk about?
Yeah, for sure. So Mr. Masuda, he had made other interviews on how the music is still very true to the original Game Boy Classic games, but they've been reimagined for the Nintendo Switch version. So, like as I mentioned, there's a lot of Easter eggs hidden within that core fans will appreciate, and music is one of them, because you'll start hearing these little iconic tunes as you travel across Kanto. Be it that you're in just a regular road from Pallet Town to all the way to Pewter City, or if you're going through Fuchsia City, you'll hear all these really cool jingles that you might have recognized when you were younger.
Yeah, I'm really excited just to go through and see, okay, here's the things that really like hit that nostalgia and are very similar, and then maybe some of the things that are slightly different as you progress through the different towns.
Yeah, because like even though I'm talking about all these nods to the past, there's still a lot of things that are new, and so there's definitely new experiences that it's not the same adventure that you lived back in the day.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to Team Rocket, which I've seen in some of the videos that have come out. And,
yes.
And I wasn't, I wasn't fully aware. Again, Pokemon is something that I wasn't a big fan or fully aware of it right when it started. I started getting into some of the later games, and actually some of my first experiences were games like Pokemon Snap on Nintendo 64, and things like that were kind of some of more of the side games, I guess. But I was surprised when I watched the original reveal trailer for these games, just how much nostalgia I did feel for it. I mean, I think if you're a Pokemon fan, but even if you're a Nintendo fan, even if you're just used to seeing some of those original Pokemon in games like Super Smash Brothers and things like that, I think you don't, at least for me, I didn't fully realize what kind of impact it would have on me, this sense of going back to the beginning and getting to re-experience it all over again.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really the characters and their stories that really get me, let me sink into a game. And so, again, like you had mentioned, Team Rocket, Jesse James, and even having their counterpart Meowth in their little collective form and showing them in the games and seeing them in like cutscenes and in the gameplay, it's just so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. My girlfriend isn't like a Pokemon expert or anything, but I'm super excited to be able to like bring her along for the ride and like be like, this happened to me when I was this age, and I remember this encounter and getting this Pokemon and beating this guy and trading this with my brother, and it'll be really cool to share that together.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and like I said with my son, I thought he just in the last couple of years has become a gamer and gotten old enough to where he can really kind of get good at the games. And I thought for sure Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon would be his jumping on point to Pokemon, but he was still a little bit young for that. So now I'm like, okay, this is perfect. He's already excited about the Pokemon Let's Go games. And so he's already Team Eevee. I'm going to be Team Pikachu. We're each going to get our own copies and just have a lot of fun.
I'm Team Eevee, so I'm in fully support.
I'm
okay.
Team Pikachu, so we got a real good balance here.
Oh, good. We got some
too.
good balance. Yeah. If I bring my son into the mix, we're all balanced out. All right, so number 3 on my list are newly discovered Pokemon, and there was one in particular that caused quite a stir recently.
That's right. It was Meltan, the newly discovered mythical Pokemon in Kanto.
And this is, I believe, a Pokemon that has appeared now in Pokemon Go already, and will also be appearing in the Let's Go games.
Yeah, so Pokemon Go did a very interesting thing with Meltan, where you just appeared all of a sudden in the environment, and when players went to go tap him and catch him, it turned into a Ditto. And this confused a lot of fans, especially because I'm not quite sure what was happening. And eventually it came out that this was a new Pokemon, and Meltan would be associated to the Pokemon Let's Go games. Then eventually it came out later on that Meltan could also evolve into another evolution called Melmetal, and players will require 400 candy in order to evolve Meltan into Melmetal. So, and he's a beast.
He's huge.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, the size of that Pokemon. But it was a really big thing too, because this is the very first mythical Pokemon that actually gets to evolve, because previous mythical Pokemon just had one form. And so that was a really big surprise for a lot of fans.
I like that he's 8 feet tall and thousands of pounds and just like such a presence.
Yeah, like even the little videos that were the discussions between Professor Willow and Professor Oak to explain the whole mechanics, but also the little live action video that they showed of all the little Meltans moving around. Like they're just it brings further to life of how Pokemon aren't just these creatures, but they're characters that you build this relationship with, and they interact with you in a whole different way. So it's just really fun.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice surprise, because obviously I'm looking forward to revisiting these original Pokemon, and in a way, for me, going back to that very first adventure and experiencing it in a new way, I feel like I'm getting a second chance to jump on board from the beginning in a way. But at the same time, you introduce Meltan, and you've got a little something brand new there as well. So it's not all about nostalgia. There are things in this game that no Pokemon fan has experienced before.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why these games are so much fun. They're really a love letter to the Pokemon franchise that essentially brings in together elements from that core players might have experienced in past games, but will be a completely new experience for new players. And then you also have these elements or influences from Pokemon Go that have been introduced, so then you can experience the adventure in a whole new way.
All right, so the next one on the list here, number 4, Master Trainers. I'm particularly excited about this. What can you tell us about Master Trainers?
Yeah, so Master Trainers are a post-game element where players will be able to challenge certain Pokemon trainers in Kanto for an additional challenge. And what this brings is that players will need to essentially level up and make stronger all of their 151 Pokemon in order to challenge and ultimately come out to be the best trainer out of that match. And it's challenging because you don't really know what moves the challenger has to potentially one-up you, but also there's no items, so it doubly increases that challenge.
Zach, are you going to try to take on all 151 Master Trainers?
Yeah, coming from the YouTube world, this is, I think, one of the coolest announcements, because there's so many different challenges and different sort of tests that you can create for yourself of like, okay, who's going to be the first to get through all 150 of them? How fast can you do that? And then specifically targeting, okay, I'm a huge Charizard fan, so got to go get that badge, or I got to go get that title. I think that's going to be something that really appeals to the hardcore and really gives it longevity on YouTube and different places like that.
Yeah, and I definitely see the value of it, because it adds that further element of replayability to the game, and from a core fan perspective, that sounds very appealing.
Yeah.
Now, Theresa, there for number 5, our last entry in our list here, there's just a lot of fan favorite features returning from past core Pokemon RPGs. And I'd just like to run through some of these and just have you kind of touch on them. The first one we've got here is riding Pokemon, which I believe, you look at Pokemon Sun and Pokemon Moon introduced Poke Ride. How is that evolved into riding Pokemon in these games?
Yeah, so there are certain large-scaled Pokemon that players will be able to ride and explore Kanto. So I know in, again, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow version, the way that you would do that was to ride a bike. And the opportunity to move around with Pokemon wasn't quite available. But yeah, in this version, I know that it's already been announced with Onyx. We've shown Charizard, and also I think what was shown was Dragonite, to name a few of how you can fly around with Pokemon as well, or ride in the ocean with Lapras. So it's a really, really fun feature to just explore the environment with this other Pokemon while your partner Pokemon is either on your shoulder or your head. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool, just that interactivity with your Pokemon trainer.
Yeah, the riding aspect is super cool. I do want to give a special shout out to Pikachu's balloon car, because I think that's a very understated element of these games that's going to be really awesome.
Yeah, and it's fun just to get to interact with your Pokemon in ways beyond just the battles. I think any chance you get to feel more like you're bonding with your team, that seems very much in the spirit of the series.
Yeah.
And then similar to how Pokemon X and Pokemon Y introduced Pokemon Ami, if I'm even pronouncing that right, you'll be able to play with your partner Pokemon.
That's right. So there's an option where players can interact with their Pokemon, partner Pokemon, and that is a way for you to build the bond within between you and your partner. And it's incredibly advantageous because it might bring perks when you're exploring through the game. But it really just furthers that connection that you have with this Pokemon, because you are essentially starting your adventure from the beginnings of being a Pokemon trainer, really, and then to becoming the best, and they're with you at every step of the way. So you'll be able to pet them, you'll be able to feed them, and they'll potentially give you high fives or little gifts. And they'll even call you to your attention during the adventure as well when they want to interact with you or tell you there's something nearby. So yeah, it's a really, really fun feature. I think it was in Treehouse Live, that the segment that I just did, where after battling with Team Rocket, Pikachu was kind of calling my attention, and there was an icon at the bottom left of the screen, and as I shook my controller, then the Pikachu would show up, and he looked completely exasperated after the whole ordeal with Team Rocket. And so those little elements just bring to life of this adventure that we're sharing together, and they're fun moments.
Yeah, it just helps to place you within that world. And like we talked about, how visually it's so stunning. And then with the Pokeball Plus and just all of these elements, you get to feel like a trainer more and better than ever before.
Yeah. And it's also this sort of reference and nod to also the cartoon series of how Ash had a partner with Pikachu and how they were always traveling together. So again, it's that nod as well within the games of how you have this partner with you at all times too.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking specifically about the trainers, just like we saw introduced in Pokemon X and Pokemon Y, these trainer customization features, how can you customize your trainer in this game?
I believe it was in Pokemon X and Y, correct? That customization was first introduced to the Pokemon trainer, the player's own trainer. And now in this game, not only do you get to customize your Pokemon trainer, but also your partner. So you can mix and match outfits, but you could also further customize your partner Pokemon with accessories. So I'm particularly a fan of having little bow ties and glasses on my partner Pokemon. And it's really adorable. It's just another little connection of personalizing my adventure the way that I want to play.
I really like the hairstyles. That's what I'm all about.
That's right.
The Pikachu hairstyles, the Eevee hairstyles, those are really, really fun.
Yes, those were a pleasant surprise too, and it's again another layer of just personalizing your adventure. So, what's your favorite hairstyle that you've seen so far?
I really like. I like the hats. So I guess my hairstyle will be a little bit hidden. I really like the Explorer hat, and then there's like those like spirally like googly eyeglasses.
Yeah. The thick glasses.
Yeah, those ones are really fun.
It'd be great to see your partner Pokemon decked out like that, during different, dramatic parts of the game.
Yeah, there's opportunity to make your Pokemon extremely cute, where you put flowers, but also incredibly science-y and nerdy.
Now, obviously, one of the biggest points that I think everyone's aware of with this game is the Pokeball Plus accessory. And, that really takes me back to the Pokewalker, which I think was introduced in Pokemon Heart Gold and Pokemon Soul Silver. But there's a lot of new stuff you can do with this. And I think for the first time, fans are going to feel like they're really there holding a Pokeball, kind of using it in just the way they've always seen it used in the games and in the anime. What are you most looking forward to, in how you use this new accessory?
Oh gosh, this accessory has so much functionality. I can't really choose a favorite because they're all really great. It's a controller that lights up and plays sound, so it makes the entire adventure a lot more immersive. I'm able to take a Pokemon out with me into the real world, and that's another way for me to level up that Pokemon, because you'll still be able to interact with that Pokemon and catching and battling other trainers, and leveling Pokemon up that way. But this is a third alternative option for you to level up that Pokemon and additionally gain rewards through your walking activity to use in your adventure. I find that extremely helpful. And then there's an added layer that you can also interact with that Pokemon out in the real world and hear their cry and like see that they're incredibly happy. And then the other functionality with the Pokeball Plus is that it has Pokemon Go Plus features. For people that don't know what Pokemon Go Plus is, it was this little device that players would be able to connect with Pokemon Go in order to make catching Pokemon easier and to spin Pokestops. So that has been improved upon in Pokeball Plus. And so you'll be able to take a Pokemon for a stroll from the Pokemon Let's Go games, but also play Pokemon Go while not looking at the smartphone screen. So it's a very versatile accessory. I just absolutely love how much functionality is in it.
Yeah, it's cool that it can go portably with you and it can be the controller at home. I had a chance to play with it at E3 and I was impressed with how well it controls like the whole game, just with the little Pokeball. And just again adds to that whole like, okay, I get to play it at home and then take it with you, like you said. And if you're a big Pokemon Go player, then it adds those elements. So it's super cool that they made a specific controller just for this.
Yeah, and it's an item that's in the game, like a Pokeball, an actual Pokeball that's in your hands. Like it's sort of like a dream for Pokemon players and in the entire way that the franchise has been out, where if you really wanted to be one, the heart and soul of a Pokemon trainer is the Pokeball.
Right.
And now that you actually have one that feels pretty good and it's interactive, it's
got a good weight. It's made really well. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to hold one?
Yeah, that's how I demoed the game at E3, and it was super cool.
I was really surprised by how much functionality it has because, you think of it, it's a controller. You can literally play the whole game one-handed, but you've got kind of like you may not be able to see this when you first look at it, but there's like a button where your kind of trigger finger naturally rests. And of course, you've got the control stick under your thumb, which I think you can click in as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's two buttons. It's the control stick that's movable and clickable, and then there's a top button as well.
And then, of course, you can use motion controls as well. So it just makes everything so effortless to be able to, with those simple buttons and commands, to be able to pretty much do anything you'd want to in the game.
Yeah, essentially everything that a Pokemon trainer needs is in their hand. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And then the other thing that I didn't get to mention too is that with every Pokeball Plus, the mythical Pokemon Mew is inside. So
that's right.
For players that want to complete their 151 Pokedex, like the Pokeball Plus is the way for you to get that mythical Pokemon.
Now, Pokemon Heart Gold and Pokemon Soul Silver, I think, marked the first time that Pokemon could, come out of the Pokeball and follow you around, follow the trainer around. And we talked about this a couple of times already, but that's obviously a huge part of the Let's Go games.
Yeah, well, technically, Pokemon Yellow version was the first time that Pikachu was able to follow you. But it was in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver where any Pokemon you can choose to have follow you. So that was really fun. And now you get to pretty much see that again here, where any Pokemon you choose or you've caught can follow you. And again, it kind of goes back to where, because in this game, the Pokemon are so true to size, you'll be able to see the variations of their sizes. Like if it's a Meltan has such small legs. And so he's like constantly struggling to catch up with you. But say that it's a Voltorb, they might just be rolling after you. So it's really, really cool to see those animations of the Pokemon following you in such really beautiful, gorgeous quality graphics.
Yeah, and then you pair it with if you're playing co-op and you get multiple of them running around, and what kind of weird combos. If I have a really tiny Pokemon, you've got a really giant Pokemon, it starts to look really fun.
That's right. I think it was a TV commercial where they showed an Alolan Executor kind of following you, and he's so tall that you can't even see the top of his head. So it's this really lanky Pokemon just following you, and it's really, really cool to see that variation.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so on the final item I have here as a fan favorite feature that's returning from a core Pokemon RPG is Mega Evolution. Originally introduced in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. How do Mega Evolutions work in the Let's Go games?
Yeah, so Mega Evolutions is new to Kanto, and you need 2 items in order to have it activated for certain Pokemon. So you need a Keystone and a Mega Stone that pertains to that Pokemon. But yeah, there are additional items that the core fan will want to get and try to hunt them down in order to activate that special ability. So it's really, really cool to see the animations during battle.
Yeah, and it's just another cool core feature of bringing something new to that original space. So obviously, as you mentioned, you didn't have that in Pokemon Yellow or in Kanto, and now being able to see how that affects battles or affects your strategy is really cool.
Yeah.
I just can't wait to play this game, and I'm hoping I can pull some strings here and maybe play it a little early. I don't know. We'll see.
Good luck with that, Chris.
I just want those Joy-Con. I'm a huge Joy-Con collector, so the Pikachu and Eevee Joy-Con, that's what I'm really waiting for.
Oh, that's awesome. You're going to get the hardware bundle?
Yeah. Yep.
Very cool.
We're going to move on now to Pros Picks. We have this every episode. This is where we talk about games that we've been playing and enjoying lately. Zach, you want to start us off? What have you been playing lately?
Sure. I had a really long flight out here, and so it was a great chance to get some more time with Mega Man 11. Very challenging game, very awesome to play portably. I played all the original Mega Man games, so I, for better or worse, try to beat these levels without the double gear system, which is sort of the new element to Mega Man 11.
That's tough.
It's not a good decision. So I started to be okay, I can use it sometimes when I really need to for the boss battles, but I love being able to play Mega Man portably. I have the X collections and the original collections, but this one being brand new, I think they did such a great job with it, and I'm a big fan of challenging games. I love Enter the Gungeon and Celeste and now Mega Man 11 just really pushing me. And I got through a boss on the flight, so I felt like that was a pretty productive time.
Well done.
Yeah, I've been playing that one not nearly as much as actually I wish I had. I've been juggling a lot of games lately, but that's one I'm enjoying, and I guess I'm kind of savoring it, taking my time, maybe halfway through the robot bosses. But as someone who is old enough to have played the original Mega Man games when they were brand new, I was just thrilled to see this guy come back.
Yeah, no, it's really cool, and yeah, make sure you use those double gear systems. It's too much without them.
Yeah, pro tip: don't fight the system; just take advantage of it. Teresa, how about you? What have you been playing lately?
Oh gosh, I've kind of been hopping between Picross S2 because a new season came out, and that was a lot of fun to play because they had an additional mode called Clip Picross, where once you've completed an entire page, it would open up little panels that you can then complete. So it further expanded on the whole replayability of these games. And then I'm also playing this really cute game that came from the Harvest Moon team called Little Dragons Cafe.
All right.
Yeah, it's really adorable. It has one of my favorite hobbies that I'm passionate about, which is cooking. And it also features a little bit of a genre that I like as well, which is rhythm. And so while you're cooking a recipe, you have to time accurately these button presses in order to get a better recipe to serve your clients. But then while you're not attending to the cafe, you're hunting around the environment for all these ingredients in order to unlock new recipes and find new recipe parts to get the full recipe so you can make that dish. So yeah, it's really a lot of fun. I like that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioning cooking, like I have to quickly point out Overcooked 2 because that's something that I play all the time. It's just so much fun. It's like the best competitive co-op game because you're obviously working together to make these dishes, but I get pretty bossy in the kitchen, so you got to put that on, bring it back, chop those, go. And I think those two games, Overcooked 1 and 2, are some of the most fun multiplayer experiences on Switch.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely love those games, and I've had a blast trying to convince people to play them with me because I also get equally bossy. But I've also enjoyed seeing people play them on YouTube. Like I've seen people compile their own videos of their gameplay experiences, and I've seen how friends can just get incredibly aggravated with each other, which is so much fun to watch.
The new DLC is really cool.
That's one of those games I'm definitely going to have people play when we get together for family parties over the holidays. I'm going to pull out Super Mario Party and Overcooked 2, and for the non-gamers in my family, I think those will be great ways to get them into it.
I'm excited about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as well. That's got a lot of characters that I just have an affinity to, and I got incredibly excited with the King K. Rool announcement. So because
my favorite character, that was the one I had to have in there, so I was so pumped to see it.
I'm a diehard Donkey Kong Country fan, so I was just completely stoked that they also revamped the song and it has lyrics now. So I'm just like trying to memorize it so I can sing it at work.
It's and I've said on the show before that I am a huge fan of the Castlevania series, so I am super excited that Simon Belmont and Richter Belmont are going to be in the game. But I was surprised after I saw the reveal trailer for Incineroar, how much I'm excited. As a kid, I loved pro wrestling, so just seeing him do all those kind of backdrops and off the ropes moves looks like he's going to be a lot of fun too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. He looks pretty challenging to control as a character. Like you need a really skilled player to control him because he's just very agile.
Yeah, I'm really excited for World of Light too, the new adventure mode. And there actually is a moment in the trailer where they show riding a Lapras, which I thought was interesting, tying into riding
Nice.
Pokemon in Let's Go.
All right, well, as far as what I've been playing lately, unfortunately not Super Smash Bros. Ultimate or the Pokemon Let's Go games, but maybe next
Not
episode.
yet, anyway.
Yeah, next episode. But I've been playing a lot of this game called Chasm. I don't know if either of you have heard of this game yet. It's you can get it from Nintendo eShop, and it's a retro style game. It's one of those pixel art games. I guess I would equate it more to like a 16-bit style of graphics, but probably a little bit better than that. It's kind of a mix of like classic Metroid and also kind of like the Castlevania games that had more of an exploration element to them, or even something like Dead Cells or SteamWorld Dig 2, because it does have this massive kind of underground maze that you explore. But what's interesting is it's a little bit randomized, and that is, if I understand it correctly, certain rooms are kind of pre-designed, but the way that they're connected is kind of randomized. So the path you're going to take through the game is unique. And I really enjoyed it. It has some fantasy elements like the ability to level up, stats, find gear. And you're constantly exploring and finding new areas underground and rescuing villagers that have been taken, so that when you go back up to the surface to the village, it then unlocks new shops or the ability to buy new magical items and things like that. So it has a lot of stuff that you're constantly a lot of ways to constantly progress. So it's one of those games that's just kind of hard to put down because you're always kind of ticking off things on your to-do list and getting a sense of satisfaction as you complete more and more of the map. I love those kinds of games in general, and this is a really fun one.
That's awesome because there are quite a few challenging games that are kind of Metroidvania like. And not to like go into a lot of detail because there's just so many of those games, and I'm a huge fan of those as well myself because I played Guacamelee, which was a lot of fun. Hollow Knight is completely challenging, and I still have yet to beat it, and I've been getting friends on my case to try to beat it because it's a gorgeous game. It's very hard, and I've had my blood pressure go up real high trying to even pass the first boss, and it's hard, but it's such a gorgeous game.
Yeah, and I enjoy that type of games. I've played all those that you mentioned, and another one that I'll give another shout out to, just because I think it's not nearly enough people are turned on to it, is Iconoclasts. Very great. To me, it felt almost like a Sega Genesis era, Metroid type exploration game. But I use Metroid type very loosely here, just in that there's a big maze to explore. There's a lot of new stuff in all these games that make them really distinct and different.
Oh, those are interesting. I'll take a look at them.
Yeah. I also want to totally support, what did you say, Picross S2.
Yeah.
I've spent a ridiculous amount of time on that game and the original one as well. You just get in that mode where I have like the news on or a TV show or something, and I'm just kind of doing that at the same time. And it just, you just get into this flow where at the end you just feel like you've been meditating or something.
It's true. It's definitely the game that I go to decompress. And it is also a game that I can multitask, and I feel incredibly accomplished when I solve a puzzle because I feel like I'm smart and I'm able to complete it. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I absolutely love that game.
Yeah, I was really into the Pokemon Picross game. I remember playing that on a bunch of flights as well, and it is just sort of like that chill out and just time passes so fast when you're going through the grids.
I 100% completed that game. I absolutely loved every moment of it. That was a fun Nintendo 3DS game.
Yeah.
All right, well, now we're going to move on to the Warp Zone quiz. This is where we guess games that came out 10, 20, or 30 years ago on Nintendo platforms. And we're a little bit behind in recording this episode. We haven't done the quiz for games that had come out during the month of October yet, so we're going to stick with October games this time. Are you guys ready for the clues?
Oh man, this is going to be a challenge for me, so I don't know if I'm going to make it, but
I'm ready for them. I'm ready.
All right.
All right, you guys will do well. I have a good feeling. All right, so 10 years ago, this is October 2008, Nintendo published a unique game for Wii in which you used various kinds of motion controls to band together with friends and enjoy songs like Ode to Joy, Jingle Bell Rock, Swan Lake, or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Any guesses?
Wii Music?
That's it, Wii Music.
Oh, wow. All right.
All right, looking good so far. 20 years ago, October 1998. The clues are Nintendo published a racing game for Nintendo 64 that included a death race mode in which you tried to run 29 other racers off the road. And the long list of racers included cartoonish characters like Pico, Octoman, and Mighty Gazelle. Any guesses?
Oh, boy.
Give you another little hint here. The racers also included someone named Captain Falcon.
Oh my God, is this Excitebike?
Nope.
It's an F-Zero. I don't remember the what specific F-Zero, but it's definitely F-Zero.
That's it. F-Zero X. You're one letter away there. Good. Half point for that one. Still looking good. All right, the last one, 30 years ago. This is October of 1988. The clues are Nintendo published a platformer for the NES that was originally called Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic in Japan, that was set in the world of Subcon, where vegetables were the key to victory. Any guesses?
Super Mario Brothers 2.
That's it. That's exactly right.
I got one.
I love this game. I love Mauser and Wart, both of them. I think they're such cool bosses.
Yeah, they are. I was super impressed about the history of Super Mario Brothers 2. I love delving into the background stories of how those games come up.
That's one of the most interesting ones. It originally, in the original Japanese version, had nothing to do with Mario. Had 4 completely different playable characters. But yet it also still did introduce mainstay Mario characters like Birdo, the Shy Guys. So it had a real lasting impact.
That's right. Gosh, Birdo's such a cool character. I wish it'd have its own game.
All right, so now we're going to move on to Player's Pulse. Now, what we've been doing recently on the show is we've been sending out tweets on specific topics and asking listeners to comment on those topics. But this time we wanted to catch up on some of the mail we've been getting on the Nintendo Power Podcast email account. So we're going to start with Justin B., who says, I recently found my Volume 32 of Nintendo Power Magazine, where I was lucky enough to make it into Power Players for completing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan for Game Boy. It made me remember how great it was to bring it to school and feel like I was king of the playground for a day. Do you all have moments you're most fond of in beating a specific game, whether it's with family, friends, or tied to a special moment in your life? Zach, how about we start with you? Any great nostalgic moments there?
Yeah, I've got two good ones. I started playing games very young. My uncle introduced me to the NES when I was 4, and we started off with like Mario Bros. and some of the main titles, but I actually beat The Little Mermaid on NES. That was the first game I ever completed by myself.
Wow.
And I was so proud. I was at my grandparents' house, and I'm sure if I went back now, it's probably a pretty easy title, but getting through it at 4, like I felt on top of the world. I didn't get a Nintendo Power, but it sure felt like it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, Capcom made some really great licensed games back then.
They did. And then the other one is, again, Capcom. Me and my best friend, my childhood best friend, we would see how fast we could get through Mega Man X and just mastering the bosses and getting like a perfect run and completing it within however many minutes. Like that was just so much fun. And we felt so accomplished of, getting through and knowing all the patterns and memorizing the levels.
That's great.
That's so cool.
Teresa, how about you?
Oh, gosh. So I don't have a cool story of having my name on a printed material because that sounds so epic. But I do have the story of where my brother and I, our family, we went to Florida for Disney World when I was 10. And he took me to this 2-level giant warehouse arcade place. Wow. Like it had a ton of arcade machines. We stopped in front of one, which was Gauntlet. Mm. And so my brother and I sat there for hours on end trying to beat it. I'm pretty sure we went through at least $50 worth in quarters.
Wow.
But the only reason we stopped was because, well, one, we went through the entire cup of quarters, but also our parents were getting hungry and they just wanted to go back to the hotel. So I was completely devastated I never got to finish it. Oh, man. But then during the Nintendo 64 era, Gauntlet Legends came out. And I was so excited when I heard that it was out. I dragged my dad to the nearest game store to go buy a copy. And when I got home, I shoved it in my brother's face. I'm like, we got to play this and we got to beat it. So we went through it again and we managed to beat it. And we also unlocked our alternate skins. So he was the warrior and got the Minotaur. I was the archer and got the Tigress. I was super excited. But that game was just kind of that moment where my brother and I bonded over video games, something that we shared alike. And that, to me, was just a memory that I've carried over.
That's great. For me, I would guess my biggest feeling of accomplishment from playing games was probably these games that have these special challenge dungeons, like in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door or The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, where they're usually pretty optional, but you just kind of go down and there'll be like maybe 50 floors, 100 floors of just harder and harder enemy fights. And the deeper you go, the greater chance you'll have to go all the way back to the beginning. And in both of those games, I managed to get through them. And especially in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, by the time you're fighting the boss at the very bottom, which is like a big, I forget his exact name, but a big skeletal creature, they basically tell you, like if you use the ability to get information on that boss, they basically tell you, look, this is harder than the actual last boss in the whole game. So, and I managed to, I was almost dead, but got lucky, and like he missed like 3 turns in a row, and I managed to pull it out and win the fight. And I just remember jumping around like a crazy person. I just couldn't believe I'd survived it.
Those are awesome game moments, though. It's like it kind of beats you to the ground, but then once you are able to accomplish it, you just pat yourself on the back because, well, one, you spend so much time investment on trying to master it. And then once you accomplish it, you just feel really good.
Yeah, for sure. That was my whole experience with the Dark Souls franchise, which I've been replaying on Switch now with the remastered edition, but of just taking beat down after beat down, but then that like final victory, I have moments that like are in videos and stuff that I made of just losing my mind in excitement, which is just so much fun to go back and relive.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have the same now too.
Anytime when you feel like there's other people that may not have made it past this point, but I did, you got to feel good about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially with the Nintendo Switch, since you could record the last 30 seconds, I'll try to capture that snippet so then I can go off and show it to my friends and coworkers. Like, look what I did.
I've probably filled up half of the SD card in my Nintendo Switch with just videos from Celeste of like, I finally got past this area and I want proof.
I'm not going to lie, but I turn on, I think it was the assist mode in order to try to get as many jumps as I could because the game is gorgeous. It's just, and I love platforming, but it is a very challenging game.
Yeah, it's pretty merciless. All right, well, let's move on to the next email from James D. He says, I adore the Mario franchise, and my favorite games have always been the Mario RPGs, especially the first 3 Paper Mario games and the Mario and Luigi series. My favorite character is Fawful, who I wish was playable in one of the party spin-offs. I'm looking forward to the remake of Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story in 2019. The long wait on that is tearing me apart. Do you have any opinions on these games and their characters? Are either of you big players of the Mario & Luigi series or Paper Mario?
I really like them. I'll give a special shout out to Mallow and Gino from way back in Super Mario RPG. That's where it started for me. But I love the humor that they bring in, and I think they're super fun. Bowser's Inside Story is one that I played a ton of, and that's probably my favorite in the franchise. But since I am at Nintendo, I do want to make a quick pitch for a Wario and Waluigi RPG. I think that would be so much fun, and like make that happen, please.
Yeah, those guys are always fun together.
Yeah, they are. They're pretty devious.
My favorite probably in the Mario & Luigi series is Bowser's Inside Story. I'm speaking of that one. And I'm also really looking forward to the new version for Nintendo 3DS, which I think comes out on January 11th. There's kind of a sad story for me on that game is that's one that when I was still working at Nintendo Power Magazine, I was playing it for review, and I got all the way to the final boss and never beat the final boss. Like my deadline was there. I said, well, okay, I didn't beat the final boss, but I've basically played the whole game. Went ahead and wrote my copy. But then when the final version of the game came out, the save files were incompatible. So as much as I love that game, I never actually beat the final boss, and that's going to be my mission when the new version comes out.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoy the game a second time around.
Yeah, and it's been so long, I probably won't remember it that well, so it'll feel like a totally new game to me anyway.
No, for sure.
But my favorite character in the Mario & Luigi series is, I agree with the letter writer here with James, it's definitely Fawful. I love his I have fury, line, or when he calls people fink rats. He even said a winner is you once, which I appreciated as a reference to pro wrestling on the NES, which is one of my favorite NES games. So, those games are just great.
So I take it you're a pro wrestling fan, Chris.
You know what? I used to be, not for quite a while, but as a kid and maybe as a teenager, I was heavy into it.
Nice.
I love Starman back in the original wrestling on NES.
Yeah, Starman, he was great. The Amazon, all those characters. I really loved and was delighted that was one of the first games that was available for the NES collection on Nintendo Switch Online. I hadn't really heard of that franchise since the 80s when the game first came out. So anyway, not to digress, I could talk about that game all day. Pokemon trainer Aiden asks, what is your favorite Nintendo Switch system? I'm sorry, what is your favorite Nintendo system and why? And I got a little bit ahead of myself there because I think we should not pick Nintendo Switch because I think, there's all of us right now might, this is what we're currently playing. And I'm sure we're all currently in love with our Nintendo Switches. But to keep things interesting, beyond that system, looking at all the other past Nintendo consoles and handhelds, which is your favorite? Teresa, you want to start?
Ooh,
can you pick?
That will always be Super Nintendo for me. Because that was the very first console that I ever got. And that is also the home to my favorite franchise of all time, Donkey Kong Country. And I have so many memories attached to that system and to the games that I played. I still have a library of them within. It's hidden in my closet, so to be preserved forever. And the system still runs to this day, and I'm incredibly impressed. and it's still dated too because you could see the yellow
Oh yeah.
underneath it. But it's just a console filled with so many childhood memories, full of laughter and love, and I absolutely love it. And I got incredibly excited too when the Super NES Classic was announced, and I bought that day one, and I absolutely love it, especially because it has Star Fox 2, which never was released, and so I got the opportunity to play that too. So yeah, I definitely Super NES for me.
Yeah, it's a close call. Super Nintendo is amazing. I love Yoshi's Island. I love Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario World. Uniracers is one of my favorite multiplayer games. I'm going to go with the GameCube. That was the first console that I ever camped out for. And I actually got to go to the Cube Club, which I never really hear talked about, but it was a special event that Nintendo brought around the country to demo Monkey Ball and Luigi's Mansion and Smash Brothers Melee before the GameCube came out. And my dad took me, and we actually won a Nintendo GameCube like a polo, like a zip-up, and I was probably 10, 11 at the time, and the shirt was huge, but I wore it to school all the time because I felt so cool, like, oh, I went to this Cube Club, and I'm so excited for the GameCube, and had this, like, oversized, giant Nintendo GameCube zip-up on.
That's awesome. Do you still have that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Can you still fit into it since it was big to begin with?
I think it's a better fit now.
How come you didn't bring it today?
I should have, huh?
Aw.
Yeah.
That's great. I could probably make an argument for almost any Nintendo system being my favorite, but I think if I could only pick one, I would have to agree with Super NES. Just because, The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Brothers, and Metroid are my three favorite franchises. And when you think that one system had The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, and it had Super Mario World and Super Metroid, all three of which are arguably the best in the series, or at least right there, it's just amazing. And just thinking of all the new franchises and innovations that system brought in, the shoulder buttons on the controller. That was a pretty magical time, was the Super NES era for me.
So many of those games still hold up so well. Like, obviously, we see in the Super Nintendo Classic, but just in general, going back and playing that platform specifically, like, I still have tons of fun. The controller feels so good. I love the purple and gray look of the system, and it's still a ton of fun.
And that was still the era too where Capcom was still making games for Disney titles,
Lion
and so
King, Aladdin,
I played a ton of those, and they were great games.
Yeah.
And I miss that era.
And if you liked RPGs, there's no better system for great classic RPGs than Super NES.
Yeah, there was Super Mario RPG, there was Final Fantasy, and Secret of Mana, and Chrono Trigger. It's just, there are a ton of games on that platform.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we have one more email here from Raimundo. He asks, which Nintendo video game narratives have captivated and engaged you the most? And what about the experience made the story so captivating?
Ooh.
Can you think of one game in particular that had such a story that you were either totally engrossed in, or maybe it moved you, or just left some kind of lasting impact?
Sure. Legend of Zelda has a great, so much good lore, but I'm going to go with something more recent. We mentioned it already, Celeste. I really love that game touched on anxiety and different emotions and feelings, and I thought they did a nice job of taking a 2D platformer game that typically you wouldn't expect much narrative from, but putting something in that was memorable and did kind of touch on some really important topics, and I think handled it really well and in a fun way. And Madeline battling like a really good character, combo, and I really enjoyed that.
I agree with you. That was actually the number one I had on my list as well.
Oh, really?
And Theresa, you talked about how punishingly hard that game can be, but I got so pulled into the story, and so early on in the game, when I started to kind of realize what was happening and this type of story they were trying to tell and how they were going about it, and I thought it was so intelligent and so trusting of the player to understand what they were communicating, and it was such a more it's such a different type of story that I really, even when the game got super tough, that's what kept me pushing past that, was because I had to know what was going to happen next.
Yeah, I still completely agree. Like, Celeste was a really great narrative experience for me because of those themes. Like, there are definitely themes that kind of don't really come out presently, and I don't recall another game also touching that in that sort of form. And so I definitely want to give out a shout out to the team that worked on that game, because it's gorgeous, but also the music was just, it engrossed you into what was happening, and it further elevated the experience of what you were going through with Madeline. So yeah, it's such a great game.
I would also say that I really appreciated the story in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I think that's a very opposite kind of, or rather I appreciate it in an opposite way that I did Celeste. Celeste was very much internal, very character-driven, and Breath of the Wild was more about this epic kind of, fantasy tale that impacted the whole world, and also just the little narrative moments that popped up because of the gameplay that weren't necessarily scripted. I thought it was a game that really had a lasting impact on me from a narrative point of view.
Yeah, the Legend of Zelda franchise has been one that tells stories really intimately, and I think they've done that even since back in the day. Because I specifically remember going through Ocarina of Time and, funnily enough, using a Nintendo Power Guide to try to get through some difficult moments, including the Water Temple, which was incredibly difficult. And then when Majora's Mask came out, that was incredibly dark, but being able to assist every single character in their trials and seeing them, they're suffering, but trying to help them out to make things better as you're also fighting the crunch of time. That was just incredibly immersive, not to mention spooky, because I have a fear of death. And so that game terrified me. And then when Breath of the Wild came out, it was, again, that whole, reliving a story from another telling and being immersed in the lives of these characters, trying to discover and uncover their background, why they got to that position or that place, and being able to help out the people that remained. It was just being sucked into that world. It's very enlightening for me. Those are the kind of games that I really, really appreciate, and that's where I am willing to put in 200 plus hours into it, just trying to cover everything and make sure I have all the grounds covered. So yeah, those are really great games.
Yeah, there are certain games like that where even when you've done everything there is to do, you're just really sad to leave that world, because you just there's so much there that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I know we're kind of going through recent games, but I kind of want to go back to for a flash to the past with one of my favorite narrative experiences, funny enough, was The Legend of Mystical Ninja. Oh. I haven't seen a game from that franchise in a really, really long time. One of the things that captivated about me was the Japanese culture within those games. And I remember picking up the Super Nintendo cartridge in a small store in New York City when games used to cost like $20. It's funny enough. And they were incredibly hard, but they also had a 2-player co-op. So I would try to get my cousin or my brother to play that along with me so I could further find out the story and help the princess. But then 2 additional games came out for the Nintendo 64 version. And the first game, which was funny enough called The Legend of Mystical Ninja in the U.S. market, it was the first time that a female character was introduced as playable in that franchise, and I was super stoked. I loved going through those experiences of swapping through characters, solving puzzles, going through platforms, but also going through the narrative experience of, we're here to save the day, and we're going to save Edo, Japan, but also turn into this giant robot that's so mecha. And so those are really fun moments too. Yeah, there's a lot of great narrative experiences on the Nintendo platforms.
Yeah, and that was definitely a great series. Very unique, that's for sure. All right, well, before we wrap things up, I want to quickly turn to Game Forecast and run through a list of some of the key games coming to Nintendo Switch in November. Now, we've already had a few of these released since as we're recording this, we've just started the month, but I'm going to cover off on them anyway because we got some really cool stuff here. On November 1st, we have Transistor. On November 2nd, we have Diablo 3 Eternal Collection. Also on November 2nd, Taiko no Tatsujin, Drum and Fun. Then on November 5th, Moonlighter. On November 6th, Carnival Games. Also on November 6th, we have World of Final Fantasy Maxima, Rogue Legacy, and Grip. And then on November 13th, we have SNK 40th Anniversary Collection. On November 16th, a little game called Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. Don't know if you guys heard about that.
Yes.
And then on the same day, Sid Meier's Civilization 6. And then on November 20th, Warframe. Now, obviously, let's start with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. We have already talked about that game. Obviously, we're all looking forward to it. Is there any last comments you just want to say, really from a personal perspective, things you're looking forward to with this game?
I'm just really excited to hear and see reactions, and I'm hoping that they also share this adventure with new Pokemon players and welcome them to the franchise. That's really what the heart of the Pokemon fandom is. It's just to bring more into the whole envelope and group and challenge each other, because we're all Pokemon trainers at heart, and what we do best is to kind of encourage each other, share mechanics, which that's the other thing about this community, is that everybody's incredibly friendly and shares their strategies and what types triumph others, what's super effective, what isn't, best practices. And it's really heartwarming to see that support. And it'd be really exciting to see this franchise grow from years on out and see that group grow.
Yeah, I'm super excited just to soak up the sights. I love especially the looks of the gyms. The ones that have been shown thus far are so cool, and just the way that they're realized in this graphical style. Getting to the later gyms will be really cool. And then also just playing it together. It's just something that hasn't been possible. And from like a YouTube perspective, that'll be so much fun. Like the different antics that we can get into with me and my brother, me and my girlfriend, of playing together, and how battles go down, or even just running around and exploring and like, where are you going, what's going, like it'll just create a lot of really, really silly fun moments.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm really excited to share this with friends as well, and then tally up of which team is supreme.
Yeah.
Eevee or Pikachu.
Well, was there anything else from the list in November that jumped out to you guys?
Yeah, I want to call out a couple. One, I've been playing a lot of Diablo 3 Eternal Collection. I think they've done a phenomenal job of converting that to the Switch. I was a little worried, just like, how would it control? This is a PC, centric franchise, but it's awesome. It runs really great. There's virtually no load times. They've mapped the buttons super well, so that's really awesome to play, and also to see that franchise hit a Nintendo platform. Really cool. Rogue Legacy is probably my favorite roguelite ever, and you mentioned how much fun you're having with Chasm and those different games. So if you haven't played that one, you got to get on that. It's so good.
Oh, good to know. I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, the progression and just like the overall progress, you get a different descendant every time you go through, and they have weird quirks. Some of them might be upside down. Some of them might not be able to swing their sword. All just different. It adds extra challenge. It's super fun. And then lastly, Warframe at the end of the month. I think it's so cool that we're getting these online-centric games. We've seen it with Fortnite and Paladins and Arena of Valor, something like that. But it's just, again, like a totally different genre being added to the Switch, and exposing Nintendo fans to, I think, totally different types of games that we might not have had previously. And Warframe just has such a huge audience already. It'll be really cool to have that on Switch.
I would second with Zach on Diablo 3, because it's a game that's hailing from Activision Blizzard, and these are the kind of games that we haven't really seen on the Nintendo platforms before, and it's a lot of fun. It's that really challenging roguelike element of the gameplay, and how it's pretty demanding from a hardware perspective, but it plays really smoothly, and it's just a lot of fun also to share that experience with other players too, because it's a multiplayer game. So yeah, I would second with that one. And then the other game that's on the list that I'm intrigued on is Taiko no Tatsujin.
Yeah.
Because this is a franchise that hasn't really been predominant in the US side, and it's a pretty interactive, fun game. Again, it focuses on taiko, which is like a type of drum in Japan. So there's a little bit of the Japanese culture that I'm quite interested in, but also it's a rhythm game. And it's just a lot of fun because you don't necessarily need to have the drum accessory to play it. It's just a nice to have. And it's a little bit more immersive because you get to play with that instrument, but you can play it with the 2 Joy-Con that are already on the Nintendo Switch system. And there's DLC attached to it, so if players want to expand their music library, that is an option. But yeah, I'm really excited to dive in deep on that game. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think for anyone who's not familiar with the series, if you are familiar with Donkey Konga on Nintendo GameCube,
that's right.
It's
just
very
going to point
similar
that
to
out.
that.
Yeah. I was like, bring back Donkey Konga. I still have the drums in my closet somewhere.
Same here. Yeah, I still have those bongo drums. I agree with Diablo 3. I've just started playing it. I'm not. I'm coming into the series new. Like with a lot of things, I'm experiencing these popular new franchises for the first time on Nintendo Switch, and one of the things that struck me straight off the bat is just how smooth the game is, and it just feels very polished, and I'm starting to see what all the fuss is about. So I'm looking forward to getting more into that. I've also heard good things about Transistor, and I noticed that in the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection is this old NES game called Crystallis, which I think from a very specific era, a lot of people kind of are aware of that game, mainly through Nintendo Power Magazine. It was one of those games that was a surprise hit, and a lot of people started coming up with strategy guides for it. I think the old Nintendo game counselors used to get a lot of calls about that, and I think that may have been partly what led to them re-releasing that game or a version of that game on Game Boy Advance, I think. So it's, if you're aware of Crystallis, I'm sure you're excited that it's going to be in this collection. If you haven't heard of it before, check it out. It's a cool action RPG that's leans a little bit more on the action side, a little bit like maybe a traditional Legend of Zelda game, although not quite the same. But looking forward to playing through that one again. It's been a while.
I just want to also point out that this is like a really cool month for collectors of limited edition stuff. I get all like the consoles and Joy-Con, and the Smash Bros bundle came out, the Diablo bundle, we got the Pokemon bundle, so like all the cool dock art, the cool Joy-Con. It's like a really fun month as like I said, like a crazy collector. Like I'm gonna get all the bundles.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you can tell the holidays are on the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Zach and Theresa, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
It's been a blast. Thank you.
Great. See you next time. That's it for this episode of Nintendo Power Podcast. If you have any comments or questions you'd like us to consider answering on the show, you can email us at nintendopowerpodcast@noa.nintendo.com. Also, we always appreciate it if you can leave a review, and be sure to subscribe so you get new episodes as soon as they're ready. Thanks for listening, and keep playing with power.